That I put the veil on my head, I think to myself, like, okay, I am before God. This is something different. That I am not here for anything that I can get, but simply because I want to be here with Jesus, simply because I am going to be here to receive the Lord and be then an example of Him, bring Him to other people. Really, it comes down to, am I doing this for man or am I doing this for God? Welcome back to the Everyday Saint podcast. It is Catholic communicator Eve Rosemary, and I am really looking forward to this episode today because one of the biggest topics of conversation, especially on my social media channels, is that I veil at Mass. And this is kind of an uncommon practice to see, and I think I've gotten a lot of questions about veiling, what it means to veil, why we veil, how to veil, all the good stuff. And so I thought it would be really neat to do a whole podcast episode all about veiling, try and answer some of these questions that you might have about veiling if this is something that you're interested in, but also share a little bit about why I started veiling in the first place. So to begin, I figured I'd tell you the story about how I first heard about veiling. Now, veiling is something that was common practice before Vatican II. After the Second Vatican Council, veiling stopped in practice in most parts of the country, most parts of the world, that women didn't veil anymore at Mass. And this is a practice you'll see in a lot of traditional Catholic circles, but not so much elsewhere. And I remember the very first time that I was really put in a traditional Catholic setting was I went to this Catholic youth expedition in Wisconsin, and while I was there, it was one of those Catholic youth expeditions or like Catholic circles where I was the minority for being someone who went to a private school. A lot of these kids were homeschooled, and I had never experienced anything like this before. My faith really wasn't something that had taken root in my heart quite yet at this point in my life. However, while I was at this expedition, while we would go to Mass, these girls, before they went to Mass, they'd quick run back to our cabin, grab a veil, and put something on their head. I was looking at them like, who are these people? Like, what are they wearing? What is on their head? And I didn't really ask any questions. I felt like I was very out of place at this expedition, this retreat, because my faith, again, it really wasn't my own at this point. It was just something that was there. Honestly, I was only on this expedition because I thought there was a boy who was cute who invited me to go. So that's a little context for why I was even there in the first place. But anywho, so I had seen the veils. That was the very first time I'd ever seen a veil. Never really thought anything about it until COVID happened, and all of a sudden right before COVID was really where I started taking my faith more seriously. I started posting about my faith on TikTok, believe it or not, of all places to start, right? And while I was starting to post more in here, I was being put in group chats of like Catholic group chats, Christian group chats for people who were doing really similar things to me. And on one of these Catholic group chats, actually, they kind of were talking about this practice of veiling. And they were talking about veiling, they were talking about receiving the Eucharist on the tongue rather than the hands. And again, these were things I was like, I go to Catholic school and I've never heard these things before in my life. Like, who are these people? And so I kind of started doing a little bit of my own research, learning bit by bit more about the tradition of the Catholic faith, more than just something that I do that makes me feel good, because I'd just been on this retreat that totally radically changed my life and made me be like, oh, the faith is awesome. I feel so much passion, so much love for God. Like, I can't shut up about it, which is a great spot to be in. But I think through some of these learning experiences, I started to really see the beauty of the Catholic faith as something that is long-standing, something that's beyond just the feelings, but something that's truly beyond anything our generation could experience, because it's something that goes beyond anything that we know. I mean, it started 2,000 years ago. There's 2,000 years of history in just the Catholic faith alone that we can go and study. So this is kind of where I started learning a little bit more. And then in this group chat, I learned about veiling. I actually bought my first veil at that point. I didn't know anything really about the practice of veiling. I knew that I saw a lot of white veils. I didn't want to get white because, okay, this is former pageant Eve talking. White is not one of my colors. quote unquote. Okay, we're told about our color seasons. I'm a deep winter, which means I should be able to wear white, but I grew up being told that I shouldn't wear white because it doesn't harmonize with my hair color and my skin tone. So I didn't want a white veil because I'm like, this is not one of my colors. Which is fair. I still live by my colors and I'm still repairing my relationship with wearing white. But I purchased a black veil with gold lace. It's very beautiful, but I thought it might go well with kind of my hair color, that it could blend in a little bit more. And again, this was kind of during COVID time, so we weren't even going to mass at this point. Maybe churches were just starting to open. And as churches started to open, I was showing up, even though it was not mandatory at that point to go into mass depending on the diocese that you were in. I was still going to mass, but I wasn't going somewhere that was incredibly known for being reverent. It's kind of like, like random small town Wisconsin church. We'll say that. If you're from the Midwest, I feel like you know what I mean. Like Packer jerseys are worn on Sundays with your flip-flops or maybe your work boots. So I wasn't really at a parish that I think facilitated a good opportunity to really want to get into veiling. Like I felt so out of place and so distracted veiling at this particular parish. And I think that's just a normal learning curve anytime that you start veiling. Is like, it feels like everybody is watching you, and the truth is that no one, well, okay, actually, yes, people are probably looking at you, but that's okay, right? That's really the learning curve, is that you kind of get used to it. And so I stopped veiling at that point just because it felt very unnatural. I felt like I was being really distracting to myself and distracting to others during Mass. And so I stopped veiling. I also didn't really know why I was veiling, honestly. It was just kind of like something I'd seen these other people doing that I was like, oh, this is cool. I should try doing this because it's something different. In fact, I think actually there was a cute boy in this, oh goodness, there was a cute boy in this group chat that I was like, oh, he thinks it's cool when you veil, so I'm going to veil. That was absolutely a large part of the motivation. Okay, we're seeing a theme here. Don't What's the quote? Is it like, do as I say, not do as I do? Okay. We are not veiling because there's a cute boy who tells you to veil. We are veiling because God tells you to veil. And that's the ultimate man that we should be listening to in the first place anyways, you guys. So, anywho, I get to Benedictine College as a freshman in college, right? So COVID was my junior and senior year. Now I'm a freshman in college. I haven't been veiling. And that's not really anything that bothers me. Again, as I go through this podcast too, I want to make it clear, like, I don't think that every single woman should be veiling. I think this is a devotion that if you feel called to it, you should do it. But I'm never the type of person to say that every single woman should be veiling. I think it's an interior disposition. I think it's an exterior disposition of your faith as well, that if God calls you to veil, you should veil. Right? We should be obedient if that's something you feel God calling you to, and an inkling to learn more. But I would never say that every single woman should veil. But I get to Benedictine, and while I'm there, I notice a lot of girls my age veiling at Mass. And it kind of stirs up those feelings of like, what is on their head? Like, I remember thinking those things as a little sophomore in high school, seeing these girls at that retreat veiling for the first time. I was kind of brought back to that place of like, curiosity of what is this? Why are there so many? I'd never seen so many girls my age veiling at Mass. And it's just, at Benedictine, you get those very traditional families, and it's so beautiful to see that there were so many people my age, even just going to daily Mass, going to adoration. And so I saw these women veiling, and there was quite a few women who lived on the same floor as me, my freshman year dorm, who were also veiling. And one woman in particular, her name is Grace. She's one of the very first podcast episodes on the Everyday Saint podcast. We talk a little bit about veiling because she was really the person who encouraged me to veil the most, and not even in a way that it was, she wasn't trying to get me to veil. right? It was just her example that really intrigued me. And she was one of those people, if you know Grace, like she's so wonderful to talk to and so fun to talk to. And we had a class together, and it was one of those like gen ed classes that no one pays attention. So she was on Etsy, I think, shopping for more veils, and that's really where the conversation started for us. I was on Amazon making my Christmas list, and she was shopping for veils. That is exactly how this started. And so we were just like talking after class anyways, trying to be friends. We lived like 2 doors down from each other in our freshman year dorm. And so I was asking her about veiling and how she started doing it. And then she took me out to coffee that next week, and we talked a little bit more about veiling. And for me, what stuck out about this practice was she explained that the church veils what is true, what is beautiful, and what is life-giving, right? We have the tabernacle. God is true, God is beautiful, God, especially in the Eucharist, is life-giving. And women also fit this bill naturally, right? We are created by God, so we are true. We are created by God specifically to be beautiful, right? Guys are not created in the same way to be beautiful as girls are created to be beautiful. In fact, I remember like in an internship that I had during college, I worked at a hospitality center, and I had to go through photos of this venue that was mostly used for weddings. And as I was going through all of these photos that they had sent me to organize, I realized as I was looking through the photos, the only thing that I was paying attention to was the bride. Like I really was drawn to and captivated by her beauty that I literally forgot to look at how the groom looked in a lot of those photos. Like it didn't matter. And I think that's just a little example. Even in the things that we do, the things that girls are involved with, right? We have the makeup industry, the hair industry, the clothing industry. Like mostly those are feminine things that girls are naturally drawn to. And it's because we have this calling on our life simply to be beautiful. And how amazing is it that naturally, like we put so much pressure on ourselves to be beautiful, but by nature of being creations by God, we are already beautiful. It takes so much of the pressure off. So women are true, we are beautiful, and we are also life-giving. Like we, in comparison to men, like men can't bear life. They cannot hold life in their womb within them and then give birth to a child. Like only women can do that. So we are like naturally life-giving. So that's kind of where this practice of veiling comes from. And again, it was just one of those things that you do, like very traditional Catholics do it. It stopped after the Second Vatican Council, but that's not to say that it's not something that can still be practiced today. And she also kind of explained that veiling was really beautiful to her prayer life because it helped her focus on the Mass more. And that's really been my experience as well. So I want to explain maybe a few reasons why I personally veil, which are rooted in a lot of what Grace said, because there's so much truth in what she told me in this conversation, but that I focus so much better during Mass and so much better during adoration when I veil, because it reminds me that I'm somewhere different. Like, isn't that the whole point of, not the whole point, but a large part of the Mass and about the faith is that we are not made for this life, that we are made for something different. We are made for something beyond the life that we are living. That's an amazing spot to be in. So to physically put ourselves in that scenario, right? Like that's why we kneel at Mass. That's why we say certain prayers during Mass. That's why we go to a specific building for Mass that is hopefully very beautiful and reminds us of our heavenly reality. This is what veiling does for me, is that I put the veil on my head. I think to myself like, okay, I am before God. This is something different. This is something that I need to pay attention to, something that I need to pay attention for, right? I get so distracted during Mass, especially like daily Mass, 7 a.m. Like you're in the pew, you haven't had your cup of coffee yet, because if you wanted to have coffee, that means you probably would have had to wake up an hour earlier so that you could have finished a cup of coffee before the hour-long fast before Mass begins. And at that point, is it even worth it? No, I'd rather have the extra hour of sleep instead. So, you're stuck in Mass, and it's either you're really tired or you have a million places to be, because that's how we work as busy human beings. And really, the Mass is a spot where we can rest. And so putting that veil on my head, it's just like, boom, I'm ready. I'm ready to be here. It helps me focus a little bit more. Another really incredible reflection that I've had is really going back to that point of beauty. As you know, and if you've listened to the Everyday Saint podcast for a while now, you know that I'm someone who's really struggled with a lot of insecurities, and it's been a big theme throughout my life, throughout my prayer life, especially growing up in the Miss America organization, it was something that I struggled with, but especially in the last 4 years of all the health struggles that I faced, and as my body composition has changed a lot, these insecurities have been really overwhelming. And actually, something really beautiful that I'm really realizing as I'm just having this conversation with you is that at the same time I started veiling was at the same time that a lot of these health problems started popping up for me. And so I was so consumed with the thoughts of what I looked like that that was a lot of what my prayer life has been about the last 4 years in general, these insecurities and trying to bring them to God, trying to keep my mind focused off of what the scale read that morning or what I'm going to eat or that I'm hungry because I'm trying to lose weight or, whatever it is, those thoughts that women, we tend to have more often, unfortunately. And I was really in this place where that veiling, that covering up, reminded me of the beauty that God has for us already. Like, I very specifically remember this one time during Mass, probably like a year and a half ago. Again, these insecurities, you guys, I still struggle with it to this day. And I was in Mass. It was just one of those days where I was like, it's just not a good body image day. It's just not feeling very confident in myself. And I was veiling at Mass. It was a Sunday. I even put on a nice dress, still wasn't feeling it. And after, having my veil on, walking, this is a beautiful part about veiling too, is like it reminds you of your bridal identity towards God and how intentionally He loves us and radically He loves us, that I was walking down the aisle to receive Jesus, right? Like brides walk down the aisle. I was walking down the aisle to receive Jesus with the veil on my head, reminded of about how beautiful He thinks that I am, not because of anything of what I look like, but because He simply knows me. And so as I walk down the aisle and I receive the Eucharist and I sit back down, I'm just like immediately reminded of how beautiful God thinks that I am. Like, I just received Jesus within me. So I am naturally beautiful because of that, because of Jesus. And I was just like, God kind of unveiled my eyes in a lot of ways in that moment to see myself how He sees me. And it was that reflection of like me walking down the aisle to receive the greatest love of my life, which is the Lord, and then be able to sit back down in the pew. That was really what changed the rest of the day for me, right? Because I was reminded of how beautiful God thought that I was, and that I am a bride of Jesus Christ, and that He loves me, and this is the greatest love story that I have. And that's just something that's really helped me, because it's taken the focus off of me in a lot of ways as well. Like, this is not about me. This is something beyond myself. And it's that humility. That's really what veiling is modesty and humility. To say, like, I am nothing and God is everything. And this is a physical reminder of that reality, that I am not here for anything that I can get, but simply because I want to be here with Jesus, simply because I am going to be here to receive the Lord and be then an example of Him, bring Him to other people in my daily life, because I've received my daily bread, the Eucharist, which is just a really wonderful, wonderful reason and a wonderful reflection to have while veiling. And then the final reflection that I'll leave you with before we get into some questions from you guys, because that's going to get into a lot more of the practicality about veiling and just your fun questions in general about veiling, is the last thing I'll say is that it's definitely deepened my Marian devotion, because Mary would have had a veil. Mary would have covered her head at all times because of the times that she was in. And I think this is so fascinating to think about when we do veil at Mass, is that when we're veiling at Mass, it's a very Marian reality to the sacrifice that we're facing. Like, Mary would have been at the foot of the cross with her head covered, staring up at Jesus. And so in the same way, when I look up at the crucifix and I see the outlines of my veil, I'm reminded of what Mary would have seen at the foot of the cross. I'm reminded of what Mary would have experienced in that intimate moment with Jesus as she approached Him while, after He was crucified or while He was resurrected. Like, those are the encounters that we have with Jesus in the Eucharist that Mary would have had with Jesus during her earthly life and her earthly mission. And I just find that to be very, very beautiful. Okay, we're going to get into some questions, but before we do, if you are watching on YouTube, you may have noticed this really phenomenal painting behind me, and I want to point you to Outpouring of Trust, who's our sponsor for today's podcast. I had the privilege of being next to her in a conference. I couldn't stop looking at her artwork. It was the most beautiful thing. I bought 3 things from her that day. Easy peasy. It took me forever to decide even what things I wanted. So if you are looking to elevate your space, if you're looking to elevate your room, or maybe you need a space in your office that just reminds you of Jesus, I've never seen anything like it. It is really so beautiful. Go check out Outpouring of Trust in the description below. Okay, and now I want to get to some of your questions about veiling. So I wrote them down off Instagram, and then we're going to answer them. Okay, how do you wear your hair while you veil? This is a great question. And actually this goes into how to keep the veil on your head easier as well. That's a big question that I know you guys have, is like, how do you even keep it on your head? Because it's always falling down. Like, it's just this piece of lace, right, that goes on your head. And something that's always helped me is if I do like a half up, half down, or just like pull my hair back, because it creates friction for the veil to not fall off my head. So that's really helpful. Or if you curl your hair, the worst that it gets when it comes to like just the veil always falling off is when you've just washed your hair, because your hair is so soft and silky, which is beautiful, but it does not keep the veil on your head very easily. So I'd encourage you, if you don't get a veil that has already like a pin in it that will help it stay, to wear your hair half up or half down. Or if you have, I have super straight hair, so then if I curl it or crimp it or do something to it, it helps it stay more. And even though you cannot see your hair while you're veiling very well, it's perfect for, like, if you curl your hair, you might not be able to see it during Mass, but it gives you all the more excuse to go to brunch with your friends afterwards, and you'll look very, very cute. So that is my recommendation for you. Okay, next question. How do I do it around my family who aren't really practicing Catholics? I really liked this question because I think it dives into even just the pressure that we feel when we start veiling at Mass, and how it feels like everyone is looking at us. In fact, there's been a couple Masses that I veiled at that my mom was like, yeah, I know, I was looking around during Mass, and like this guy, like guys would like, or other people at Mass, when they walk past me to like go up to receive Jesus, because I'm like almost always in the front pews, and have my veil on, they'll do like this double take of like, huh? Like, what is she doing? And so my encouragement for you is that it's going to be difficult at first. It's going to be really intimidating, I think, to start veiling at first, and that's okay. Like, I just want to go in full honesty, it's going to be really intimidating at first. You just have to kind of get past that first little bit of veiling to really get comfortable with it, that it becomes second nature. Maybe something that would be helpful is if you're able to go to daily Mass, to start there because there's less people, or if you have an adoration chapel, to do it at the adoration chapel. I also feel like I see more people veiling at adoration. I know not everyone can make it to adoration during the week, but if they're making the time for adoration during the week, that I think speaks to their faith, and you're just more likely to see people there that are veiling maybe a little bit more traditional. I'd encourage you maybe to start in those spaces, and then maybe if your family's not practicing, it's like on the car ride to Mass, you can explain, oh, I recently learned about this devotion, I want to try it out, this is what it looks like, here's the veil that I have. It also is better to start with a simple veil, I'd say, than really elaborate ones. There are some really beautiful veils out there, but maybe just find a really simple white veil to begin with, or a veil that kind of matches your hair color, just because I think that helps with the intimidation aspect of it, and it makes you feel like you blend in a little bit more than if you have one that's really elaborate or has a lot of embellishments on it, which draws more attention to you. Start with a more simple veil. Maybe use the car ride beforehand, or like that morning, to just be like, oh, like I'm bringing this with me. Or I don't know, you could even like leave the veil on the counter and be like, oh, I can't forget this, like I just got it in the mail. Or hey, maybe even that's it, like when it arrives in the mail that day, be like, oh, look what I got in the mail today. And then you, boom, easy way to just like explain the devotion to your family, even if they don't understand it right away. I feel like it's kind of one of those things that they see the faith in you and are able to appreciate the fact that you're wanting to take this devotion further. And again, it's not like you're pressuring them to veil. This is just something that you're going to do at Mass, and I think it'll speak to your faith. And it really draws to mind the question of like, what are we doing this for? Are you doing it for the approval of other people, or are you doing it because God has called you to veil? And if God has called you to veil, then it's something that you ought to do. And I think that ability to lean on God in those moments that it's really intimidating is going to bleed into the rest of your life as well. I've noticed that I've been able to be a little bit more bold with my faith because I've put myself in those uncomfortable situations where my faith has been very clearly on display, such as veiling at Mass, where it's been like, okay, this is kind of intimidating and I have to rely on God because I feel kind of embarrassed, but I think He wants me to do this, so I'm going to do it. And then in the day-to-day life, when it's like, oh, maybe in this moment I would have been a little bit more afraid to bring up my faith, I have a little bit more of that courage because I've practiced the courage in other moments of my life. So that would be my encouragement for you. Okay, next question. Would people look at me funny? Okay, I feel like I kind of just answered this question. I literally wrote them down and I just have them on little slips of paper so I can read them off because I think it's more fun. Would people look at me funny? Yes, they will. They will. And you know what? Again, that's okay because it builds courage, it builds resilience, and it builds reliance on God. So, yes, people will look at you funny, but if you go to the same Mass every week, people will start to like, it'll be a quote unquote big deal to you at first, and then it won't be a big deal. Especially if you go to the same parish every week and people see you wearing your veil every week, it makes it a lot easier to go because people just naturally will see it. And start small. You don't have to have a whole veil collection. You don't have to have the most beautiful veil right away. Start small, start simple, and go from there. Next question. Can I wear it to a Novus Ordo Mass or only to traditional Latin Mass? Honestly, I am not a Latin Mass goer. I'm not opposed to Latin Mass. I think it's very beautiful, but I'm more of a Novus Ordo person. I like the English, truth be told, and I wear my veil to Novus Ordo Mass. I've worn it to traditional Latin Mass. At like Latin Mass, you'll see pretty much every single woman veiling. At Novus Ordo Mass, you'll pretty much see every woman not veiling. But you can absolutely veil at Novus Ordo Mass. And in fact, I'd encourage it. Like, again, if it's a devotion that God is calling you to, go and do it. Okay. Next question. Can I veil if I have a boyfriend? Yes. And something, I think there's another question in here that we might get to, but there's different significance in the colors of the veils that you choose. So it tends to be that single women wear white veils, single as an unmarried woman, and then when you get married, you wear darker colored veils, usually black veils. And then there's like other veils in between. Like I have a red veil. It's kind of like a burgundy. It's based off of the precious blood of Christ, which is so cool. I also have a veil that's like light blue and white lace, which I wear for Marian devotions usually, or when it matches my outfit. And then I have 3 different white veils. That one just stays in my purse pretty much at all times for when I need it, like in my car. One of them is more of like, I consider it my daily Mass white veil, or like my less extravagant white veil. And then I have a white veil that's like quite beautiful but quite extravagant, so it's like I don't really want to wear that one like during daily Mass, especially if daily Mass, like sometimes I'm running to and from work, so I'm just wearing my work clothes, so it doesn't quite fit the outfit, if you will. And not that the veiling's about the aesthetics, but there is something to, like, I like to match my outfit to my veil. It's, again, going back to like where veiling comes from in the first place, true, beautiful, life-giving. So it's nice to feel beautiful and be reminded of the beauty that God has called us to. So I like to match it to my outfits. But yes, I think with this question, when I thought of it, is like when you have a boyfriend, it's like, oh, there's like the white veil for single women, black veil for unmarried women. And yes, so you can veil if you have a boyfriend because you can veil if you're married. There's no significance in the color that you choose when it comes to boyfriend, no boyfriend. In fact, I've actually heard it said by some girls who are in seasons of engagement or have been married that they they feel like this devotion to veiling has actually like reminded them of, like their wedding day and their vocation and what they're working towards, because every time that we veil at Mass, it's reminding us of our bridal identity when it comes to our relationship with God and that union, that very intimate union that we have with Him. And then when they think about dating and marriage, it's like they're able to recognize the virtues in the person that they're dating so much more, and recognize the beauty of marriage as a whole, because they've been veiling for years and years at Mass, that when it comes to their wedding day, it's like, oh, I've reflected so deeply on this topic of marriage and vocation because I've been putting it into practice. So I'd actually encourage you, if you do have a boyfriend, to veil, to think about that. Obviously, don't spend like Mass time thinking about your wedding day or something like that, right? It's more of just reminding ourselves of the really profound love that we have for the Lord. Okay, just a couple more questions here. Okay, what color to buy? Oh, okay, so I literally pretty much just went into this. The tradition is, again, darker colors for married women, lighter colors for unmarried women. Honestly, I've seen women do any color, all colors, doesn't matter if they're married or unmarried. That's more of the tradition, but I think you can, in my personal opinion, I don't think you have to stick to the colors. In fact, one of my red veil is more of like a maroon, like it's a kind of a darker color technically, but it's really beautiful and I really like it. So I would say, in my personal opinion, I'm just a girl. Go with veils that are going to match your outfits. Okay, if you wear a lot of blue, get some pretty blue veils. If you wear a lot of black, maybe get ones that will match with black really well. If you wear a lot of neutrals, maybe you get a brown veil. Maybe that's the color of your hair, so that's what you want to get. I don't know. Maybe you get one that has a bunch of colors in it. Like I've seen some really beautiful ones that are very like floral, and they have floral embroidery on it that's all different colors. So, my personal opinion, it does not matter what color you buy, but if you want to stick to the technical rules of it, which again, I don't think, if you're veiling in the tradition, like had you veiled pre-Vatican II, I think that's where the colors have mattered. I think in modern day veiling, they don't matter as much. Could I be wrong? Sure. But just based off what I saw at Benedictine, based off of what I've seen other places as well, it's really not that deep. So pick the colors and pick a veil that you just find to be really beautiful and makes you feel like you can be the most reverent during Mass in. Okay, next one. How has it been helping your faith journey? I think I answered this a lot in the beginning, but really it's just that reverence piece. That reverence and the reminder of our heavenly reality. I mean, man, what better thing to do? Like, right? Like, when anything we do that reminds us of our heavenly home and our heavenly reality, like, we should be taking part in. And that's definitely how I feel when I veil at Mass. It just really enhances my prayer life in being reminded that, like, God is something totally different, someone totally different than anyone else I will ever know, because He's my Lord and my God, like King of all kings, Lord of all lords, and He is the beholder of my heart, and so I want to do everything that I can to love Him back. And for me, veiling definitely helps remind me of that, because it reminds me of heaven and that God is someone that I owe everything to. All right, we have 2 more questions and then we will wrap up. Can it be opaque or sheer and lace? It can be either. It can be anything. You don't have to have like the veil that like you can't see your hair. You also don't have to have a veil that like you can very easily see your hair in it. It can be, either opaque or sheer and lace. I don't think there's any significance there in particular. Again, it's just what you find. I know people, if like they don't want to go out and buy a veil, they'll use like a scarf or something like that, or they have one of the veils that kind of like wraps around your head, because there's different styles, right? There's ones that just like kind of rest on your head. There's shorter ones. There's ones I've seen that are like more like headbands. There's some that quite literally like like go over your shoulder, wrap around your head, and go over the other shoulder. There's a lot of options. You can go very extravagant, you can go very simple. So with that, there's a lot of room for individuality in that. So if you want ones that are opaque or like a scarf, you could do that. You could also do ones that are a little bit more lacy. I also would encourage you to pray about it, to pray about what God wants you to do, what fits your personality, what fits your lifestyle, right? Like a mom maybe isn't going to have one that's super extravagant because their kids are going to be pulling at it during Mass, or they'll be like holding a kid or breastfeeding or doing something like that. They cannot have a veil that's going to literally wrap around their head and wrap around the other shoulder. Like that just won't work practically. Maybe they need just like a little headband, or they need one that has like a really secure clip in their head. But someone who maybe isn't thinking about those things and really appreciates like the heaviness of a larger veil, and then like I guess the density of it, like that's going to work really well for them and their prayer life. For me, I like ones that kind of like reach where my hair ends. So I kind of look for ones that meet that length and then go from there. I like the lace. I like the embroidery. I like flowers. But the name like Eve Rosemary, like Rosemary, Rose. Teresa of Avila is one of my patrons. Saint Teresa of Avila is one of my patrons, but I mean Saint Therese of Lisieux is my confirmation saint. I also love Saint Rita. All are associated with flowers. All are associated with roses. So I like ones that are sheer and then have floral embroidery. But that's just my personal opinion. So, okay, we have one last question. How do you know you have the right motivations? Who are you doing it for? Who are you doing it for? When you think about it, what do you think about? When you've considered it, has it been under the pressure of other people, or has it been because you feel really drawn to it? Have you prayed about it a lot? Has it been brought up to you in adoration in prayer? When you go to Mass, do you think about it often? I don't know. Honestly, I feel like sometimes God very clearly tells us what we should do, and we just have to try it. Also, if you are unsure about the motivations, maybe just start trying to veil and then see what you think about while you're veiling. Again, getting beyond just the feelings of like, oh my gosh, this is so scary and intimidating and everyone's looking at me. I would think when it comes to the right motivations, right? Like I mentioned earlier that it was mostly because of a boy that I started looking into veiling, and then it became my own motivation. Or my own decision to veil. So I think God can use all things when it comes to our motivations and what He wants us to do. He knows our human capacity and our human tendencies. So really just get down to like, who's bringing this up? Why are they bringing it up? Are you the one bringing it up? Is God the one bringing it up? Does it seem to be a theme in your life? Is it something that maybe you should just try and go from there and pray about it a little bit more? Really, it comes down to, am I doing this for man or am I doing this for God? And I think God will reveal that to you. I think as you veil and as you experience it, God will reveal it to you. Okay, that is all the questions. Those are all the stories that I have for right now. Thank you so much for listening. I also want to point you to the everydaysaint.com because I was able to talk a little bit more about my veiling journey on EWTN, which is linked to my website. But also, I want to point you there because I am booking speaking opportunities for the 2025 to 2026 school year. And I would love to be able to come and speak to a youth organization near you. So if you know any principals, teachers, youth ministers, people who put on retreats, if you yourself fit any of those descriptions, I would love to come and speak to your teens about chastity, virtue, and pursuing authentic love. It is my greatest passion in life to be able to do so. So there is more information on my website. The link is in the description below. It is at theeverydaysaint.com. All right, until next time, God bless you.